quarter downhill.
I know.
Well, what's up, Grovelanders? We are in Salem, Massachusetts all day today.
All day?
All day.
I am so excited about this. Now, we all learned that I don't like history, but this is fascinating to me. I like history if it's something I want to learn about, and I love this, so I'm excited.
The only thing we definitely booked was a nighttime tour. I thought that would be cool. Obviously, in Salem, you gotta do something at night. That's at 8 o'clock, but we kind of left all day free, so I just got a self-guided walking tour through an app. We're gonna do that first, because some things aren't even open yet, so we can just do the self-guided tour. Oh look, the church bells again. We pulled into the parking lot and they went off. We just pulled into Salem and I hear church bells. Is that a sign?
I know.
I wonder if that's like a thing, a normal thing, or like a tourist thing, or a church thing. And now they're going off again. Is it the church right behind us?
It is.
I wonder if it's every hour on the hour.
Yeah, but it rings more than...
So we're going to do the self-guided tour. My plan is to do the self-guided tour with footage, and I'll record some of the audio from that tour within and mixing in our own audio. There's an international monster museum, I believe, right here in Which City Mall.
I can't wait to do the wax museum.
Yeah, I'm excited to get the day going.
Yeah.
Welcome to Salem, Massachusetts. This quaint New England town hides a seriously dark history. Over 300 years ago, this was the site of the infamous Salem witch trials, in which 19 people were hanged, 5 died in prison, 1 was crushed to death, and over 150 were accused. You'll learn about the trials and more during this tour. Do you see a huge bell on the corner? This bell isn't really related to Salem's infamous witch trials, but it's still a cool landmark. In fact, it was created by none other than American Revolutionary hero Paul Revere. Look at the brick building beyond the bell, a bit to the left. Now a visitor center, this was once the site of the Salem Armory. Pause below the arch and look through. This used to be the site of the armory, until it burned down in 1982. It served as the headquarters and training facility for the 2nd Corps of Cadets, a military unit dating all the way back to 1783. A lot of New England towns have history dating back to the colonial period, and Salem is no exception. But before that, the closest thing this town had to a military was a volunteer militia made up of men from the town. During the witch trials, the head of the Salem militia was Captain Jonathan Walcott, an experienced veteran of King Philip's War. Walcott's daughter, Mary Walcott, was one of the girls who claimed to have been affected by witchcraft, and she testified extensively throughout the trials, accusing almost 60 women of being witches. Captain Walcott, for his part, seems to have believed the accusations and signed many of the complaints personally. Now, turn completely so the arch is behind you. Cross the street and walk through the alley to the next intersection. As you walk down the alley, you'll notice another large brick building to the right. That's PEM.
Oh, look at the blue trees. I don't know, I'm gonna have to look it up. Why are these trees blue? Here's the answer. And there's a QR code if you're interested in scanning to find out more information, but basically it is an artist's response to global deforestation and the climate crisis. The blue trees takes familiar urban space and temporarily transforms it into something surreal.
Our next stop is just ahead on the left. See that spooky looking brown house with the red trim? This is the Samuel Pickman House, one of the oldest homes in Salem. According to local legend, a family moved in sometime in the 1700s. Their names have been long forgotten, but the memory of their dark fate still lives on to this day. According to the story, the father started to lose his mind after moving in. He claimed to hear eerie demonic voices and see spirits in the house. Eventually, he snapped. Look up to the 2nd floor window. Do you see anyone? Supposedly, that's where he chained his 7-year-old daughter to the floor. He kept her there for days without food or water until she died. It's said that a restless spirit still haunts the house. Visitors have reported seeing the silhouette of a young girl in that very window. Pause in front of the little park on your right. This is the Salem Witch Trials Memorial, dedicated to the 20 victims of the trials. Each of these granite benches along the walls carries the name of a victim, along with the date and means of execution. So, what finally kicked off all this madness? Well, in 1692, Reverend Parris's daughter Betty, age 9, and niece Abigail Williams, age 11, began to suffer from fits. The children screamed, contorted their bodies, and said things that shocked their parents and doctors. The villagers immediately suspected the work of the devil, and a doctor brought in by the Reverend concluded that the girls were indeed under an evil hand. When other girls exhibited similar symptoms, terrified townsfolk felt that their fears had been confirmed. This bench memorializes Bridget Bishop, the first victim of the witch trials. Giles Corey was brought to an empty field, stripped naked, and covered with wooden boards. Heavy boulders were placed on the boards, a few at first, then more. Sheriff George Corwin oversaw the pressing and was known to derive pleasure from these brutal exercises. A full day passed, then another. As more rocks were piled on top of Corey, he didn't even cry out in pain. Finally, on the third day, the authorities gave Corey one final chance and asked, "How would you like to be tried?" He said only, "More weight." Then he died. He was the oldest person accused at 81. We're going to exit this memorial via the small gate next to Bishop's Bench to enter the cemetery. This is the old burying point. This is the burial place of Judge John Hawthorne, chief investigator of the witch trials. Walk in and look for his gravestone. It's the small stone covered in plexiglass. If you're wondering how so many people testified against their own friends and family, look no further than Hawthorne. He's the perfect example of a powerful official who used his influence for evil. Check out the white boxy house here on the corner of the cemetery. This is the Grimshaw House, once home to a family of famous Americans, the Peabody sisters. Lizzie Peabody, the eldest sister, was a brilliant writer and philosopher. She influenced transcendentalists like Emerson and Thoreau. Mary, the middle child, opened schools all over Massachusetts and championed for public schools on a national scale. Sophie, the youngest, turned to the arts, earning acclaim as a painter. All three Peabody sisters left a mark that lasts to this day.
So we just came across a Chinese house in the middle of Salem. It's a 16-bedroom house. It moved from China and rebuilt in Salem. We'll have to check out that tour. Oh, there's an audio tour.
Up ahead, turn into the open plaza. You'll see a brick building with the green doors. That's the old town hall, built back in 1812. This building sits on top of a network of hidden tunnels. People use them to secretly visit brothels, move illegal goods, and smuggle in pirated treasure. Literally. Check out the red brick house directly across the intersection ahead. Known today as the Merchant Inn, the Joshua Ward House sits on the land that was once the home of Sheriff George Corwin. As sheriff, Corwin signed the arrest and execution warrants for those accused of witchcraft during the trials. But he wasn't content to just sign the warrants. Corwin wanted to be a bit more hands-on. He insisted on overseeing the hangings himself, as well as the pressing of Giles Corey. Take a look to your left. Do you see an old black house on the corner of the intersection? This house belonged to Judge Jonathan Corwin. Judge Corwin, who lived here, was the uncle of Sheriff Corwin. And Judge Corwin worked alongside Judge Hawthorne in the witch trials.
Elizabeth Montgomery as Samantha Stevens. We found the Ode to Bewitched.
This restaurant is actually on land that originally belonged to Bridget Bishop. Remember her? Bishop was one of the unfortunate victims of the witch hysteria. Some locals claim her spirit still haunts the grounds. The building has one other claim to fame. This is the exact spot where Alexander Graham Bell made the first ever telephone call to the general public. He called his assistant in Boston. In 1877, this was the first stop on Alexander Graham Bell's international tour to promote the new telephone throughout the U.S. and Europe. See the church straight ahead? That's St. Peter's, and it's built on Philip English's land. Philip and Mary English were accused of witchcraft in 1692. However, unlike most of the accused, Philip and Mary were also very rich. They saw how these paranoid trials went and had no intention of being hanged. So rather than stand trial in Salem, they skipped town to New York. By leaving, they forfeited an enormous bond, 4,000 British pounds. That's over $1 million. Pause at the intersection with Federal Street. This corner used to be the site of one of the grimmest places in the entire witch trials story, the jailhouse. As bad as jail can be today, the experience of the accused witches was far, far worse. They were kept in tiny, dark, damp cells, some of which were too small to even sit down. They were frequently denied water and had to pay their jailers for food, bedding, and any other amenities. Remember Sarah Osborne? She was one of the original 3 women accused. She died here, awaiting trial. The old jail was finally demolished in the early 1800s. This is a luxury apartment building now, but it used to be the Salem Jail. Built in 1813 to replace the original jail, this jail has its own sordid history. It was the site of over 50 hangings throughout the years and was known for harsh conditions and frequent escape attempts. Shortly after the jail was abandoned, people passing swore they saw lights flickering inside and heard screams emanating from the building. And even today, after dark, people report seeing shadowy figures fleeing across the front lawn and hearing the rattle of chains behind them.
Fun fact, Albert DeSalvo was jailed here, better known as the Boston Strangler. They do have an exhibit here too, but it is closed on Sundays. Wah, wah, wah.
Continue walking straight. On your right is the Howard Street Cemetery, another of Salem's oldest burial places. Prior to its founding as a burial ground in 1801, this is believed to be the place where Giles Corey was slowly pressed to death by Sheriff Corwin. It's also one of the most haunted plots in Salem, in part due to its connection to Corey. According to local legends, Giles Corey placed a curse on the sheriffs of Salem as he was dying under the boulders. Some people point to Sheriff Corwin's death from a sudden heart attack 5 years later as the first strike in the curse. He was, after all, only 30 years old. But that wasn't the only such case. There's a strange history of sheriffs in Salem being stricken with heart conditions. Ahead, turn left on Brown Street. Notice the 3-way intersection ahead. There's an impressive statue right in the middle. That's Roger Conant. Take a look at the statue in front of you. Considering where you are, you could be forgiven for assuming this grimly cloaked figure was involved in the witch trials. This is actually Roger Conant, the founder and first governor of Salem. Check out the beautiful red brick building to your left, the one right on the corner. This land was once the home of Ann Pudiator, another victim of the witch trials. In fact, she was one of the unfortunate targets of Mary Warren's desperation. As a relatively wealthy and well-respected woman, Pudiator was not the typical target for an accusation. You're now in the Salem Common. Now, you might be wondering how the witch trials finally ended. It happened almost as suddenly as the panic began. As the accusations grew bolder, shifting toward more and more prominent members of the community, some townsfolk started to have doubts. Then someone had the audacity to accuse the governor's own wife. Upon hearing of the charges, Governor Phipps decided enough was enough. He ordered an end to the arrests and dissolved the court which had been conducting the trials. Salem Common is a public park dating all the way back to the founding of the town. During the early days of the colony, this park was filled with people and livestock wandering along the grass, making conversation as they went about their day. It was also the site of an historic American first in the 1630s. In 1637, a group of men from the town gathered together here on the common to practice military drills and formations. Not only was this the very beginning of the organized Salem militia, it was actually the very first time a regiment of volunteer soldiers organized for the common defense in America. Today, those drills on the common are considered to be the foundation of the National Guard. Simply enjoy Salem Common. This is where our tour ends.
All right, that's going to wrap up our walking tour of Salem, Massachusetts. Probably be its own video, so we're wrapping that one up, and then we're going to continue on a separate video of our shopping, and I'm getting a little hungry. It is lunchtime. The next video will be all of the other stuff besides the tour, but this one is wrapped up. Until next time, the last tag.